The Maya Itza people left the area of Yucatan and went south. They established their capital in an island in the lago or lake of Peten Itza. They called their capital Noj Peten, which means Great Island. And we're going to talk about it today. But first, this is Latina Literati. Make sure you watch the whole video till the end, because at the end, I tell you a secret. When the Spanish invaded from the north, they brought with them hundreds and hundreds of warriors from different areas of what is now Mexico. They were unable to take the Noj Peten island for 150 years. They were unable to do so. It was here on this island city where the last Mayan independent kingdom held out for 150 years. The Spanish called it Tayasal. But Noj Peten was able to hold out until 150 years after the original assault. The Spanish came back with a lot of ships and were able to take the city. Those who could flee did flee, and many fled into the surrounding jungle in order to survive and get away from the invaders. In 1697, when the Spanish at last invade with huge ships, they take the city and they destroy it. After they destroy the city, then they rebuild in their colonial fashion. And so that is why Flores is considered the second city after Cholula that has been inhabited for more time than any place else in this entire hemisphere. Noj Peten, then Tayasal, and now Flores. A really magical place to visit. In 1525, Hernan Cortez crossed the territory from north to south. He didn't stop for a fight, but local legend says that he left his horse in the care of the people of Noj Peten, and the horse died. So they built a statue to it, and you can see the statue in a square today. In the 1600s, from Veracruz in Mexico all the way to what is now Colombia in South America, all of this was called the General Captaincy or La Capitanía de Guatemala. And so this whole area was under one administrative unit. And so from Veracruz to Colombia, it was all one place, Capitanía de Guatemala. And it's only in the last 200 years that this whole area was chopped up into smaller countries, mostly for the benefit of colonial powers like the United States and France, who wanted to build a canal. But that is another story. But back to Flores. So Flores is an island in the middle of Lago Peten Itza, and it is accessed through a causeway over the lake Peten Itza. It's really beautiful because you have the colonial part, but you also have very bright architecture, kind of Caribbean vibe, as they say. And you absolutely, when you visit, have to go to one of the rooftop bars to watch the sunset. You have to get out onto the lake. So many beautiful things to see in Flores. As I mentioned before, the Spanish destroy Noj Peten, rename it Tayasal, and rebuild a colonial city. So there are cobblestone streets, the typical colonial structures, plazas and things, but even more interesting are these very bright houses that are painted in these very bright Caribbean colors. It really does give off more Caribbean than Central American themes. But why is it even called Flores? Are there too many gardens? Flores means flowers in Spanish. So actually, in 1830, the city receives its third and final name after a man who was a leader in the independence movement against Spain. His name was Cirilio Flores Estrada, and so the city is named in his honor and has been so since about 1830. So there's the colonial architecture, there's the cobblestone streets, there's the brightly colored houses, there's the beautiful waterfront activities. And so if you are in the area, if you're flying into the Mundo Maya airport to visit Tikal or Huashactung or Yaksha, spend some time in Flores because it's really worthwhile. We found lots and lots of things to do in this beautiful little city in the lake of Peten Itza. In Flores, there are lots of activities and you're going to need to speak to some of the locals. You can rent canoes on the lake or you can take tours on the lake. And I promised you a secret, so here it is. There is a town supposedly for little people on the lake. It's not in any of the tour guide books. You've got to ask the locals, where's the town, the village of little people? And it's supposed to be an ancient town, so you'll have to find it, find a local guide to take you on a boat. But that's the secret. The structures are quite tiny. We didn't actually get to visit, but we heard about it, and it was supposed to be something unique and something interesting to see. No one knows why this village for little people is there. There are several theories, but you'll have to come up with your own conclusion after you visit. We're not sure why the structures are in place and why they're so small, but one of the theories is that the Maya would plan out their large cities on a small scale first. And that makes sense because you wouldn't want to waste the precious building materials of cal and the other things used. So that's one of the theories, but you'll have to come up with your own theory once you have visited the village or the town. And now for my favorite part of the video, the book recommendations. There actually aren't any books that I found in English that are set in Peten, but there is an interesting historical societal view called Forest Society. And what it talks about is that for 200 years, the whole area of Peten was really left by itself. And the society was able to survive and thrive on some levels because it was so far away from the central administration and from lots and lots of other influences, until, of course, the Civil War. So definitely recommend this if you're interested in digging a little bit deeper into the society in Peten and the history of society in Peten. I thought it was an interesting read. The second book that I'm going to recommend today is called The Art of Political Murder: Who Killed the Bishop by Francisco Goldman. It's a book that shakes you to the core and that gives you a view into the political reality of not just Guatemala, but many other countries where the powerful have complete impunity. So a few days after releasing a report that accused and condemned Guatemala's military of murdering hundreds of thousands of civilians during the greatest genocide of the modern world in this hemisphere, Monsignor Gerardi was bludgeoned to death with a brick in his own garage. You're not going to believe this, but the police actually took his dog Balu into custody and had the dog in jail, accusing it of somehow having bludgeoned his owner. I mean, it's so ridiculous and it's such a farce. It's an incredible story, and this Monsignor Gerardi was a really important person in trying to find out what really happened during the Civil War, the genocide in Guatemala. And in fact, U.S. President Clinton and his wife came to Guatemala, and there's a plaque in Antigua where they apologize for the role of the U.S. in causing over 500,000 civilian deaths. We now know that it was actually over 1 million, and large communal graves continue to be found. So we actually don't know how many people, but we do know that at least 1/10 of the population died. So that would be the greatest genocide in modern history in this hemisphere. And it's an important story to tell, and it's an important story to comment on and understand, because the corruption and the powers that be continue. There is a special that was produced as well. In case you're interested in learning a bit more, not just from the book, but there was also a special that was prepared, and we'll link the trailer in the description box so that you can take a look at that as well.
Bishop Gerardi was a figure of authority and power who would listen to people. He represented justice in a country where there was no justice.
Thank you so much for coming to the end of the video. We really appreciate your support, and it's a joint journey. So let us know what you're reading. What are you doing this summer? We'd love to hear from you. We'd love you to subscribe to Latina Literati. Thank you so much for everything. And always, mucho cariño, mucho amor, mucho salud. Gracias.